I never imagined that a simple lullaby in a public park would cost me the anonymous life I'd built and give back the dream I'd buried. This is the story of a single father, a passing stranger, and the 3-minute recording that shattered the quiet world we'd made. That father was Leo Vance, a man who traded stadium lights for nightlights a decade ago. Once the voice of a generation, he vanished at the peak of fame, choosing to raise his son alone. Now, a viral video threatens to expose the life he hid and force an impossible choice: protect the sanctuary he built for his boy, or reclaim the stage that never forgot his name. To understand why that park bench moment would detonate his carefully constructed world, you need to know the man Leo Vance became. Every Tuesday and Thursday morning, like clockwork, he brought his 4-year-old son Ben to Riverside Park. It was their sanctuary, a green escape from their small apartment in the West End, a place where the only audience was pigeons and the only soundtrack was Ben's laughter. Leo was 36, but he moved with the careful posture of someone carrying something fragile. His dark hair was shorter than it appeared in the old magazine spreads. His hands, once photographed clutching a platinum record, now held juice boxes and sticky toddler fingers. The gentle expression he wore was hardened, the calm after a decade of storms. Ben, with his mother's bright eyes and his father's quiet intensity, was the center of this tiny universe. Leo's entire life had recalibrated around this small boy since the moment he was born, since the complication during delivery that took Ben's mother, Claire. Grief had hollowed Leo out, and fatherhood had slowly, painfully, filled him back up with a different kind of love, a love that demanded everything. But before the diapers and the pureed vegetables, before the quiet nights in a rocking chair, there was the noise. The screaming crowds, the glare of stadium lights, the name Leo Vance in lights so tall they blocked out the stars. At 22, he'd been dubbed the voice of angsty hope by Rolling Stone. His debut album, Frayed Edges, sold 2 million copies. His face was on MTV, his lyrics quoted in yearbooks, his tour selling out arenas across the country. Then at 26, at the absolute peak, he walked away. No dramatic press conference, no farewell tour. He just didn't show up for the recording sessions for his third album. His label, Titan Records, initially called it a breakdown. The truth was simpler and infinitely more complicated. Claire was pregnant. The relentless tour schedule, the pressure, the constant being pulled in 1,000 directions, it felt incompatible with the father he wanted to be. The music industry is not built for parenthood. He'd seen the casualties, the strained relationships, the children raised by nannies in hotel rooms. He made a choice. Claire supported it. They would build a quiet life. Then Claire was gone, and the choice became an anchor. The music, the fame, the person he used to be, it all felt like a betrayal of the life they'd planned, of the father he now had to be alone. He used the royalties to buy a modest trust fund for Ben, changed his last name back to his mother's maiden name, Vance, and disappeared into the deliberate anonymity of single fatherhood. His world shrank to the size of a preschooler's needs. The guitar stayed in its case under his bed. He didn't sing, not even in the shower. The voice that had once filled Madison Square Garden was reserved for whispered lullabies in a dark bedroom. Hush Little Ben, not his own hits. He worked part-time doing remote audio editing for podcasts, a ghost in the machine, using his ear to polish other people's voices while letting his own atrophy. But here's the thing about a voice like Leo's: you don't just forget how to use it. It lives in your bones, in your breath. It waits. On that particular Thursday, the air was crisp with the promise of autumn. Ben, frustrated with a stuck slide, was on the verge of a meltdown. Leo did what always worked. He pulled Ben onto his lap on their familiar bench, wrapped his green jacket around them both, and began to hum. Then, almost without thinking, the words came. It was an old folk song Claire had loved. The water is wide. His voice was low, unpolished, stripped of all performance. It was just a father soothing his son. He didn't see the silver sedan slow down on the park road. He didn't notice the driver, a woman with a sharp bob and sunglasses pushed up on her head, leaning forward, her hands frozen on the steering wheel. Elena Rossi was not lost. She was hunting. At 34, she was one of the most sought-after A&R producers in the industry, known for her preternatural ability to find raw, authentic talent before it became polished and packaged. She just left a disastrous studio session with a manufactured pop star whose voice was mostly software. The cynicism was a taste in her mouth. She'd taken the detour through the park on a whim, a futile attempt to clear her head, to remember why she'd fallen in love with music in the first place. And then she heard it, a fragment of melody, pure and unaffected, cutting through the ambient noise of the city like a beam of light through fog. It wasn't just the technical quality, though the control, the subtle vibrato, the emotional resonance were all there, masterful even at a whisper. It was the story in the tone, a depth of feeling that no studio trick could replicate. Her professional instinct, a reflex honed over 12 years, snapped to attention. She slammed on the brakes, the car lurching to a stop at the curb. She peered through the trees, a man on a bench, a child on his lap. The source, it seemed impossible. This wasn't a blues bar or an open mic. This was a playground. She fumbled for her phone, opening her voice memo app, hitting record just as the song reached its quiet climax. She got 45 seconds that made the hair on her arms stand up. Leo finished the song, kissed the top of Ben's head, and didn't look up. The moment was complete for him. For Alina, it was just beginning. Her mind was already racing, cross-referencing that voice with 1,000 others. It was hauntingly familiar, yet she couldn't place it. A ghost from the past or a complete unknown. She watched the man stand, swing his giggling son onto his shoulders, and begin walking toward the park exit with the slow, patient gait of a parent with nowhere more important to be. Alina made a decision in a heartbeat. She threw the car into park, grabbed her phone, and shoved the door open. She had to know. This voice, this man, buried in domesticity, it was the antithesis of everything she'd just suffered through in the studio. It felt like an answer to a question she'd stopped asking. She started walking, then running, her leather jacket flapping, the recorded fragment burning in her pocket like a secret. Leo, bouncing Ben gently on his shoulders, heard the quick footsteps on the path behind him. He assumed it was another jogger and moved to the side without turning around. A woman's voice, slightly breathless, cut through the calm. "Excuse me, I'm so sorry to bother you." He turned, a stranger, stylish but intense, her eyes locked on him with an unsettling focus. Ben peeked down from his perch, curious. "Hi," Leo said, his guard immediately up, his arm tightening around Ben's leg. Alina took a breath, her professional persona clicking into place, though her excitement bled through. "My name is Alina Rossi, I'm a music producer." She saw the flicker in his eyes, not recognition, but something else. "Alarm, I was driving by and I heard you singing to your son. I have to tell you that was extraordinary." Leo's expression closed down completely. The pleasant, anonymous dad facade solidified into a wall. "Thank you," he said, the words polite and final. He began to turn away. "Wait, please." Alina stepped forward, then stopped, realizing her intensity was scaring him. She softened her approach. "I know this is strange, really strange, but that voice, it's not just good, it's once-in-a-generation good. Have you ever performed professionally?" The question hung in the autumn air. Leo looked at her, really looked at her, and in that moment, Alina saw it. Not the shyness of an amateur, but the weary recognition of someone who'd heard this before, a long time ago. The pieces clicked with a dizzying suddenness. The timbre, the phrasing, the jawline under the stubble, the man who vanished. "Oh my God," she breathed, the words escaping before she could stop them. "You're Leo, you're asterisk him, frayed edges, you just disappeared." All the color drained from Leo's face. The sanctuary of the park evaporated. The past, with all its noise and light and pain, had just found him, and it was holding out a business card in a perfectly manicured hand. The business card felt like a live wire in Leo's hand. He stared at the embossed letters, ELENA ROSSI, A&R Director, Crescendo Records, as the past 10 years of careful isolation collapsed in the space of a heartbeat. Ben, sensing the shift in his father's posture, squirmed on his shoulders. "Daddy." "It's okay, buddy," Leo said, his voice miraculously steady. He looked from the card to Alina's expectant face. The park around them no longer felt safe. Every rustling leaf sounded like a shutter click, every passerby a potential fan, or worse, a paparazzo. "You've made a mistake." I don't think I have, Elena said, her tone softening into something perilously close to pity. Leo Vance. Frayed Edges sold 2 million copies. Your sophomore album, Quiet Revolutions, debuted at #1, then radio silence. The industry's greatest what if, and you've been here, in a park, the whole time. Leo shoved the card back toward her. That person doesn't exist anymore. My name is Leo. I'm Ben's dad, that's it. That voice says otherwise. Elena didn't take the card, she held up her phone. I recorded a snippet, just listen. Before he could protest, she played the 45 seconds. His own voice, raw and unfiltered, floated between them, a lullaby transformed into a siren song by the cold medium of a speaker. It was like hearing a ghost, his ghost. He saw the awe in her eyes, the hunter's triumph. It was the same look every executive had given him when they saw dollar signs dressed up in ripped jeans. Delete it, he said, cold and low. Or what? The challenge was gentle, but it was there. You'll call the police? I'm not threatening you, Leo. I'm presenting an opportunity. That sound, in today's manufactured landscape, it's an earthquake. Authenticity is the only currency left. People are starving for it. I'm not interested. He turned and began walking toward the park gate, his stride quickening. Ben, confused, started to fuss. Elena kept pace easily. Is it the money? We can structure a deal that sets up your son for life. A trust fund that makes your old royalties look like pocket change. Don't, Leo snapped, stopping short. He lowered Ben to the ground, holding his hand tightly. Don't use him. This isn't about money. Then what is it about? She genuinely seemed to want to know. Fear. The industry chewed you up and spat you out, I get that. But it's different now. Artists have more control. Social media, direct-to-fan platforms. You don't get it, Leo laughed, a hollow sound. I wasn't spat out, I walked away, on purpose. The industry didn't take anything from me, I chose what to keep. He looked down at Ben, who was now intently watching a ladybug on a bench. I kept the only thing that mattered. Elena was silent for a long moment, studying him. Not the myth, but the man, the tired lines around his eyes, the protective hunch of his shoulders, the absolute certainty in his stance. She nodded slowly, a strategist reassessing the battlefield. Okay, I believe you, but here's the thing you're not considering, that recording exists. I'm a professional, I won't leak it. But what if someone else had been recording, a mom on her phone, a teenager making a TikTok, it would already be viral. Your sanctuary isn't a secret anymore, it's a location, and locations get found. The truth of her words was a physical blow. The park, their bench, their routine, it was all compromised. What are you saying? I'm saying you have two choices. You can try to run again, change your name, move cities, always looking over your shoulder. Or, she said, stepping closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, you can control the narrative. One interview, one song, on your terms. You give the world just enough to satisfy its curiosity, and you fund the quiet life you want. You build a wall of your own making. It was a devil's bargain, wrapped in sensible logic, control versus chaos, and if I say no. Elena shrugged, a gesture that wasn't nearly as casual as she intended. Then I walk away, but the genie is out of the bottle, Leo. I recognized you, others will too, it's only a matter of time. Ben tugged on his hand. Daddy, I'm hungry. The mundane demand shattered the high-stakes standoff. Reality reasserted itself. Snack time, nap schedules, the crushing weight of bedtime routines. This was his life. I have to go, Leo said, his resolve firming. Take the card, Elena said, not pushing it this time. If you change your mind, or if you just need someone who understands the storm that's probably coming to help you navigate it. This was a new angle, not a producer, but a lifeline. It was perhaps her most clever move yet. Leo, against every screaming instinct, took the card, not as acceptance, but as a threat assessment, a name and number for the enemy. He stuffed it in his pocket without looking at it. Goodbye, Ms. Rossi. He walked away, Ben's small hand in his, and didn't look back. He could feel her gaze on him until they turned the corner onto the busy street, where the city's noise swallowed them whole. The apartment felt different when they returned. Smaller, flimsier. As Ben napped, Leo did what he hadn't done in years. He opened his laptop and Googled himself. Leo Vance missing still yielded conspiracy forums. Whatever happened to Leo Vance was a perennial thread on music subreddits, with new comments every few months from nostalgic fans. His Wikipedia page was frozen in time, last edited 8 years ago with the note, "Current whereabouts unknown." He felt a perverse surge of pride. He'd done it. He'd truly vanished. Then he typed in Elena Rossi, Crescendo Records. The results were immediate and impressive. Trade publications hailed her as a hit-making savant. She championed 3 now platinum artists in the past 5 years, all known for their organic and heartfelt sound. She was powerful, credible, and most alarmingly, she was telling the truth about the industry's hunger for authenticity. A video interview of her played. She spoke passionately about finding the human heartbeat in the digital noise. She was good. Dangerous because she believed what she was selling. His phone buzzed, a notification from a neighborhood parent group. Someone had posted a blurry picture. "Anyone know this guy? Saw him singing beautifully to his kid in Riverside Park today. What a voice." The photo was taken from a distance, but it was unmistakably him and Ben on their bench. His blood ran cold. Elena's warning was no longer theoretical. The clock had started. The comments began popping up. "Wow, he's gorgeous. Such a sweet dad moment." Then the 5th comment, "He looks familiar, sorta like that singer who disappeared, Leo something." Leo closed the app, his hands trembling. He rushed to Ben's room, standing over his sleeping son, listening to his peaceful breaths. This was what he was protecting, this quiet, trusting sleep. The world didn't just want his voice. It would consume his son's childhood as a charming sidebar. The single dad crooner and his adorable kid. He'd seen the narrative before. It was a cage lined with velvet. He pulled the business card from his pocket. The paper was crisp, expensive. He traced the raised lettering. "Control the narrative," the phrase echoed. What if she was right? What if the only way to truly protect Ben was to step into the light on his own terms, make one definitive statement, and then use the proceeds to buy a deeper, more secure anonymity, a house somewhere remote, true financial freedom, no more part-time scrambling? It was a seductive fantasy, and it was the exact same fantasy he'd sold himself a decade ago, that he could have just one more tour, one more album, and then settle down. The goalposts always moved. The doorbell rang. Leo jumped, his heart hammering. He wasn't expecting anyone. He peered through the peephole, a delivery person with a massive, cellophane-wrapped bouquet of white orchids. He opened the door, bewildered. "For a Leo Vance?" the delivery person asked. "That's me." The name felt alien on his tongue. The flowers were stunning, impersonal, and expensive. The card was simple, "For the voice that reminded me why I do this." No pressure, just admiration. A phone number was handwritten below her printed one, her personal line. It wasn't an offer, it was a courtship, a display of resources and patience. She was proving she wasn't going to blast his story to TMZ. She was playing the long game, and she was playing it elegantly. This was worse than a threat he could fight. This felt like being slowly, kindly cornered. He placed the orchids on the kitchen counter, where they looked absurdly out of place next to a half-empty box of cereal. His phone buzzed again. This time, a text from an unknown number. The area code was Lowe's Angels. "The flowers are a thank you, not a bribe, for the moment of beauty in the park. I've silenced the neighborhood group post, called in a favor with the admin. Consider it a gesture of good faith." She found the post, and she'd killed it, not just observed the threat, but neutralized it. He stared at the message. The power she wielded was effortless and terrifying. She could make problems disappear. What else could she make disappear? Debts, insecurities, the constant fear of not having enough for Ben's future. He didn't reply, but he didn't delete the number. That night, after Ben was asleep, Leo did something he'd forbidden himself for a decade. He went to the closet, moved aside winter coats, and pulled out the old, hard-shell guitar case. Dust rained down. The latches clicked open with a sound that was a skeleton key to his past. Inside, nestled in faded blue velvet, was the Gibson Hummingbird Acoustic. His first major purchase after his debut went gold. Claire had hated how much he spent on it. He lifted it out, the weight and curve of it against his body, a muscle memory so profound it brought tears to his eyes. He didn't plug in. He just sat on the edge of his bed in the dark and let his fingers find the chords to The Water Is Wide. He played it perfectly, no rust. The language was still there, buried but fluent. He played for an hour, quietly, a secret concert for an audience of ghosts. The songs that came weren't his old hits. They were fragments, half-formed laments for Claire, joyful ditties for Ben, confused ballads about a man split in two. The creative dam, reinforced for so long, had finally cracked. He put the guitar away, his hands shaking not from fatigue but from fear. The fear wasn't of failure anymore, it was of how much he still wanted it. The connection, the expression, the roar of a crowd transmuted into a shared, silent understanding. He had buried the desire, but he had not killed it. Elena Rossi hadn't just found a hidden singer, she'd accidentally watered a long-dormant seed. The next morning, the world hadn't ended. Ben demanded waffles. The sun shone, but the atmosphere had shifted. Every ring of his phone was a potential ambush. Every email notification made him flinch. He was waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the viral post she hadn't caught, for a reporter on his doorstep. By Tuesday, the tension was a constant hum. He couldn't focus on his audio editing work. He found himself listening to modern folk playlists, analyzing the production, hearing the spaces where his voice would fit. He was scouting, and he hated himself for it. On Wednesday, the shoe finally dropped, but not from the direction he expected. A certified letter arrived from a law firm he didn't recognize. His stomach clenched. Inside was a dense, formal document. It was from Titan Records, his old label. The language was legalese, but the crux was clear. A review of their dormant contract had revealed potential unfulfilled commitments and ownership questions regarding unpublished demos recorded during his tenure. They were initiating a good-faith dialogue to clarify asset ownership. It was a shot across the bow, a reminder. They owned pieces of him, or at least they claimed to. They'd ignored him for years, but now somehow they were stirring. The timing couldn't be a coincidence. Someone had tipped them off. Had Elena spoken to someone? Or had the rumor mill, sparked by that deleted neighborhood post, already reached the halls of his old label? This changed everything. It wasn't just an offer now, it was a siege. He had a producer on one side offering a lifeline and his old corporate masters on the other, flexing contractual muscles. If he stayed silent, Titan could tie him up in legal battles for years, draining the trust fund he'd built for Ben. They could release half-finished, embarrassing demos against his will, shaping the narrative themselves. Control the narrative. Elena's words were now a survival strategy. He picked up his phone, the screen blurring through his tears of frustration. He typed a text to the Lowe's Angels number. "We need to talk, in person, somewhere private." The reply was almost instantaneous. "Name the time and place, I'll be there." Leo made a decision that felt less like a choice and more like a surrender to the current. He would hear her out, not as a starry-eyed artist, but as a father assessing a tactical alliance. He would meet the storm head-on with the only ally he seemed to have. He was no longer just a dad on a park bench. He was a strategic asset entering negotiations with the most precious thing in the world, his son's future, as the ultimate bargaining chip. The quiet life was officially over. They met at a secluded greenhouse cafe on the city's outskirts, a place of hushed humidity and the scent of damp earth. Leo arrived first, with Ben in tow, using his son as both a shield and a reminder of his priorities. Elena entered 5 minutes later, dressed down in jeans and a simple black sweater, a leather portfolio under her arm. She'd brought a small wooden toy car for Ben, which she offered with a quiet, "I heard you like things that go." It was disarming. Ben, after a glance at his father's hesitant nod, took it with a shy "thank you." This was not the park predator. This was a negotiator. They ordered coffee, and Leo let Ben play with the toy car at a nearby table of potted ferns, within sight but out of earshot. "Thank you for coming," Elena began, "and for the text. I was hopping but not expecting." Leo didn't waste time. He slid the certified letter from Titan Records across the table. "Did you do this?" Elena read it, her expression shifting from curiosity to genuine concern. "No, I absolutely did not." She looked up, meeting his eyes. "But I'm not surprised. The industry is a small, gossipy town. Your name is a legend with an open case file. All it takes is one intern at Crescendo overhearing me talk to a colleague, one loose comment. It would get back to Titan in hours. They're dinosaurs, but they have lawyers who wake up every day looking for assets to monetize. She tapped the letter. This is a fishing expedition. They're testing the waters, seeing if you'll bite or if you'll scare. I'm scared, Leo admitted, the raw honesty surprising himself. Not for me, for him, he nodded toward Ben. I know, Elena's voice was soft. So let's talk about how we use this, because this letter changes things. It makes my proposal not just an opportunity, but a defense. Her plan was meticulous. She laid it out like a general mapping a campaign, a single, carefully curated song release, not a comeback, but a closing chapter. A standalone single, a heartfelt ballad about fatherhood and loss, recorded in an intimate studio session. She would produce it herself. They would release it under his own newly formed label, which Crescendo would distribute. This structure would give him creative control and the majority of royalties. The publicity would be managed with one exclusive interview, a major magazine, with a writer she trusted. The narrative would be set in stone. Leo Vance found peace in a quiet life, and this song was a gift to his fans, a final piece of the puzzle. Then he would retire again, permanently, his legacy complete and his privacy purchased. The financial projection she showed him was staggering. Based on streaming forecasts and the inevitable viral nostalgia factor, a conservative estimate put his earnings at over $2 million from the single release alone. Enough to buy a house outright, fund Ben's education, and create a financial buffer that would last decades. You give them one last, beautiful thing, Elena said, her eyes alight with the vision. And in return, you get the resources to disappear so completely, not even Titan's lawyers can find a reason to bother you. You satisfy the public's curiosity on your terms, and you legally and financially inoculate yourself against the past. It was a masterful pitch. It addressed every fear. Control, security, closure. Leo felt the seductive pull of it. It felt like a way out that wasn't running, but a strategic retreat. And Titan. You use their letter against them, she said, a sharp smile playing on her lips. My legal team at Crescendo will respond. We'll assert that any unfinished business is null due to years of abandonment, and that your new work is under a completely separate entity. But we'll also offer them a tiny, symbolic percentage of the single's profits as a goodwill settlement to go away forever. They'll take it. It's free money for them, and it gets them off your back permanently. It was chess, and she was thinking 10 moves ahead. Leo was quiet for a long time, watching Ben make the toy car zoom between fern pots. Why? He finally asked. Why go to all this trouble? You could sign a dozen new artists in the time it takes to manage this delicate operation. Elena leaned back, considering her answer. Because the industry is full of voices. Most of them are just noise. Yours, it's a signal. It cuts through. And maybe, she said, looking suddenly weary, maybe I want to prove that we can do this right just once. That it doesn't have to end in burnout or tragedy or exploitation. That an artist can have a happy ending, even if that ending is a quiet life. It would be my masterpiece, Leo. Not the song, the story. Her vulnerability was the most potent weapon she'd used yet. He believed her. He agreed to a trial, one studio session. He would see how it felt. The following week, with Ben at a trusted friend's house, Leo walked into a state-of-the-art recording studio for the first time in over a decade. The smell, the blend of old wood, electronics, and coffee was a time machine. His stomach churned. Elena was there, along with a veteran, soft-spoken sound engineer named Marty, who famously never read gossip blogs. For 4 hours, Leo worked. They started with the folk song from the park, then a fragment of a new lullaby he'd written for Ben. The muscles of performance, atrophied for so long, began to twitch back to life. It was terrifying and exhilarating. Elena guided with a light touch, asking for emotional truth, not technical perfection. When he played back the first take, he didn't hear the dad on the park bench. He heard an artist, and it felt like meeting an old friend he'd missed desperately. He left the studio emotionally raw, but buzzing with a forgotten energy. Elena was ecstatic. It's perfect. It's everything I heard in the park and more. The plan was in motion. But here where the first crack appeared. As Leo was leaving, Marty the engineer stopped him. Hey man, that was incredible, really. I worked on your first album, you know, assistant engineer. It's good to have you back. He handed Leo a card. If you ever need anything away from all the corporate stuff. He glanced toward Elena's office. It was a tiny act of solidarity and a warning. The industry hadn't changed that much. A few days later, Elena called, her voice tight. "We have a problem. The magazine interview is set, but the writer, he's digging, asking for old contacts, trying to find Claire's family. He wants the full tragedy." I said no, but he's pushing. Leo felt the walls closing in. "Shut it down, no interview." "I can't. The deal is part of the distribution agreement. The story is the engine, but I can control it. I'll be in the room." The control was already slipping. Then the second crack. A blurry video surfaced on a niche music blog. It was cell phone footage, shaky and zoomed in, of Leo and Ben leaving the Greenhouse Cafe from their meeting. The caption read, "Is this the missing Leo Vance? Spotted looking very much alive and a dad." The post had only a few hundred views, but it was a spark in dry tinder. Elena had it taken down within an hour, but the genie was out. The comments section had already lit up with fans confirming it was him. The Whisper network was now a shout. Panicked, Leo agreed to accelerate the timeline, record the final single, do the interview, and get it all out there to control the blast. He spent a feverish weekend writing, channeling his anxiety into a song he called Anchor. It was about Ben, about being held in place by a love so deep it felt like both salvation and chain. They scheduled the final recording session and the interview for the same week. The pressure was immense. Leo stopped sleeping. He was short with Ben, then overwhelmed with guilt. The quiet life he was fighting for was being destroyed in the process of securing it. The interview took place in a sterile hotel suite. The writer, a man in his 50s with a kindly face and cold eyes, asked probing questions about Claire's death. Leo shut down. Elena jumped in, redirecting. It was a tense, awkward dance. At the end, the writer smiled. "This is a great story. The comeback dad. It's going to resonate." After he left, Leo slumped in his chair. "He's going to twist it. He's going to write what we gave him," Elena insisted, but her confidence seemed frayed. 2 days before the final recording session, the third and largest crack shattered everything. Leo's phone rang. It was a number with a New York area code he didn't recognize. He answered. "Leo, it's Michael Gable." The name was a punch to the gut. Michael Gable was the slick, ruthless CEO of Titan Records, the man who'd called him son and family until the profits dipped. "Heard you're stirring up the pot. We need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," Leo said, trying to sound firm. "Oh, I think there is. See, we have a contractual right of first refusal on any new material you produce. A little clause on page 47 of your old deal. And we're refusing to let you release this little side project with Crescendo. In fact, we think you owe us another album." Leo's blood turned to ice. "That's not," Elena's lawyers said. "Her lawyers aren't looking at your original signed contract, kid. We are, and we're prepared to enforce it. Unless, of course, you want to come home, we'll tear up the old deal, give you a new one, big advance, full album, a real comeback. We'll even throw in a charitable donation in Claire's name. Think of the legacy." It was a trap, a brutal, calculated power play. Titan hadn't been fishing, they'd been laying a net. They'd let Elena do all the work, let Leo get his hopes up, and then they'd pounced, claiming ownership of the very escape plan he'd built. Leo called Elena, his voice shaking with rage. "They have a right of first refusal, did you know?" Silence, then a quiet, we saw the clause. We assessed it as unenforceable due to abandonment and the new corporate structure. Our lawyers were confident. "Your lawyers were wrong. They're claiming the whole thing. They're threatening to sue to stop the single and demand an album." He could hear Elena's sharp intake of breath. Okay, this is a negotiation tactic. They want a piece, we'll give them a bigger piece." "No, don't you get it? They don't want a piece, they want me. They want the narrative, the comeback, the whole circus. They're not interested in my one beautiful song and quiet exit. They want the machine to start back up." He hung up, sinking to the floor of his kitchen. The elegant plan was in ruins. He was caught between two corporate entities, both now fighting over him as an asset. The quiet father was gone. In his place was a commodity up for auction. The final blow came that evening. Ben, who had been unusually quiet, came out of his room holding Leo's old Gibson guitar by the neck, dragging it on the floor. "Daddy, play the Parks song." Leo looked at his son, then at the guitar, an instrument of both his past joy and his current torment. He'd been so focused on the deal, the lawyers, the interview, that he'd missed the fear in his own child's eyes. "Not now, buddy," he said, his voice brittle. Ben's face crumpled. "You're always on the phone, you're always mad." He dropped the guitar, which landed with a discordant thrum, and ran back to his room, sobbing. In that moment, Leo saw the truth with devastating clarity. He had been trying to build a wall to protect their life, but in the process, he had already torn it down himself. The sanctuary wasn't being invaded from the outside. He had dismantled it from within, brick by brick, with every phone call, every secret meeting, every moment of distraction. He had a decision to make, but it was no longer about choosing between the past and the present. It was about choosing which version of himself would define the future, the asset fought over by Titan and Crescendo, or the father his son needed right now. The battle lines were drawn, not in boardrooms, but in his own living room, and the first casualty was already his little boy's sense of safety. The music had to stop. Leo didn't pick up the guitar. He walked past it, the discordant strings still humming on the floor, and went to his son's room. Ben was curled in a ball, facing the wall, his small shoulders shaking. Leo lay down beside him, wrapping his arms around the tiny, rigid form. He didn't say anything. He just held him, breathing in the scent of his hair, feeling the tremors of grief that were his fault. After a long time, Ben turned and buried his face in Leo's chest. "I'm sorry, Daddy." "No, buddy, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The words were a dam breaking. He cried then, openly, for the first time in years. Not for Claire, not for his lost career, but for the precious, ordinary moments he'd sacrificed on the altar of a hypothetical future. He had been so busy building a wall that he'd stopped living inside the home he was trying to protect. In that quiet, tear-soaked clarity, the decision made itself. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was a series of small, definitive actions. The next morning, he called Elena. Her voice was tense, ready for battle. "Leo, I've been on with legal all night. We have a counter-strategy." "Stop," he said, his voice calm, final. "There is no strategy, I'm out. Cancel the session, kill the interview, the project is over." Silence. "Then, you can't be serious. After everything, Titan will eat you alive." "Let them try, they're suing a ghost. They want Leo Vance, the asset. I am Leo, Ben's father. They can have the ghost. I'm done negotiating." "Leo, please, think about Ben's future." "I am," he said, and hung up. He then called Michael Gable at Titan Records directly. The CEO answered on the first ring, smug. "Leo, knew you'd come to your senses." "I'm not coming back," Leo said, cutting him off. "I'm not recording a new album. I'm not releasing a single. You can sue me. You can tie me up in court for the next decade. But know this, I will show up to every deposition and talk only about the creative bankruptcy of your label and the emotional manipulation of your artists. I will give interviews to every blog that asks about the soul-crushing machinery of Titan. I will become your most expensive, most vocal headache. Or you can drop the claim, sign a release saying all old contracts are null, and I will grant you one thing." Gable was sputtering. What thing?" "The masters. You own the masters to my first 2 albums outright. No more royalty disputes. They're 100% yours to re-release, remaster, and monetize however you want. A clean, profitable break." It was a brutal, brilliant concession. He was giving away his lifelong artistic ownership, the fruits of his youth, for his freedom. For Titan, it was a guaranteed revenue stream without the hassle of a difficult artist. For Leo, it was cutting the last tether. Gable, after a long pause, said, "We'd need that in writing, and a non-disparagement clause." "Fine, your lawyers can draw it up, but the release from my old contract is non-negotiable." Leo's hand was shaking, but his voice was stone. The deal was struck within 48 hours. Leo Vance, the recording artist, was officially, legally laid to rest. His past was now a pure commodity, and his future was his own. He called Elena one last time to explain, not to negotiate. She listened in stunned silence. "You gave them your masters, Leo, that's your legacy." My legacy is asleep in the next room, and I almost lost him. He took a deep breath. Elena, thank you for seeing me, for reminding me I still had a voice, but I was trying to use it to buy silence, and that's not what it's for. There was a long pause. When she spoke, her voice was thick with something that sounded like respect. What will you do? I'm not sure, but it won't be in hiding anymore. He sold his city apartment, using the last of his savings and a small advance from the master rights sale to Titan. He didn't buy a remote fortress. He bought a small, modest house in a friendly suburb closer to good schools with a big backyard. A home, not a bunker. The viral post and the gossip died down almost immediately. Without new fuel, the internet's attention span moved on. Leo Vance faded back into comforting myth. But the music didn't leave, it couldn't. Now that he'd stopped fighting it, it began to flow in a new, gentle way. He didn't write for an album, he wrote for the moment. Silly songs about bath time, a gentle melody to help Ben memorize his planets. He played at local open mic nights, not as a prodigal star, but as Leo, Ben's dad, who sang nice songs. The community loved him, it was enough. Then, a year after the park bench, he received an email. It was from Marty, the sound engineer from his aborted session. Attached was a single audio file. The subject line read, "For Ben." Leo opened it with trepidation. It was the song Anchor, the one he'd written and recorded in that frantic, hopeful week. But it was different. Marty had stripped away the studio polish, leaving only Leo's voice and guitar, raw and intimate, exactly as it had felt in the room. He'd added nothing but the faintest ambient sound of the studio space, making it feel like a private performance. A note in the email said, "I saved this. It didn't belong to them. It belongs to you and your boy. Do with it what you want." Leo listened, tears streaming down his face. It was beautiful. It was his truth from that chaotic time preserved. He knew what to do. On Ben's 5th birthday, Leo created a simple website. No store, no merch, no biography, just a single page. At the top it read, "A song for my son." Below was the audio player for Anchor and a short note. "This is not a comeback, it's a lullaby. If it brings you peace, please consider donating to the Children's Grief Foundation, linked below." He set the song to "Name Your Price" with a minimum of 0. He told no one, he didn't promote it, he just let it exist. But Elena Rossi, who still had a Google alert for his name, found it. She listened and she cried. And then, without asking, she did what she did best. She championed it. She didn't call press. She simply sent the link to 5 trusted music journalists and 2 influential folk playlists on streaming platforms with a one-line note, "A gift. Listen." The song spread quietly, organically, like a secret past between friends. It didn't chart. It didn't go viral in the explosive sense. But it found its people, parents, grievers, anyone seeking an authentic moment of calm. Donations to the charity ticked steadily upward. The comments on the site were stories of loss and love, not celebrity gossip. Leo had, entirely by accident, created the very thing Elena had originally promised, a controlled, meaningful connection on his terms. One afternoon, a package arrived, no return address. Inside was a framed gold record, but it wasn't for sales, it was a custom plaque. It read, "Presented to Leo Vance, for Anchor, 1 million streams of solace." There was no note. Leo smiled. He hung it in his home office next to Ben's finger-painted masterpieces, a trophy not for fame, but for resonance. The final surprise came on a sunny Saturday back at a different park. Ben, now 5, was conquering a climbing frame. Leo watched from a bench, his guitar case beside him, not hidden, just part of the day. A young woman approached, looking nervous. "Excuse me, are you Leo? I mean, the guy who wrote Anchor." Leo nodded, bracing for the fan moment. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "My dad died last year. That song, it was the only thing that helped my little brother sleep. He plays it every night. Thank you." She hurried away before he could respond. Leo sat there, the sun warm on his face, watching his son triumphantly reach the top of the slide. He had spent a decade believing he had to choose between being an artist and being a father, that one would destroy the other. He was wrong. The father he had become was the artist he was always meant to be. The voice wasn't a weapon or a commodity. It was a thread, connecting his grief to others, his love for Ben to the universal ache of caring for something fragile. He didn't need a record deal to validate that. He just needed to be brave enough to sing and wise enough to know when to stop. The storm had passed. It hadn't left ruin in its wake. It had cleared the air, leaving a landscape where he could finally see the path forward, not as a ghost and not as a star, but simply as a man with a guitar and a son who was waiting for his turn on the swings. The quiet life wasn't gone. It had just gotten a little louder and a lot more real. And so the story that began with a producer slamming on her brakes ends not with a stadium tour, but with a man on a different park bench, his guitar case open, playing for no one and everyone. Leo Vance's journey forces us to ask a difficult question: what does it mean to win? In a world that measures success in streams, sold-out shows, and viral moments, Leo redefined victory on the quietest terms possible: peace, presence, the trust in his son's eyes. His story is a mirror held up to our own compromises. We're all told to chase the light, to grow our audience, to scale our passions into empires. But what gets lost in that blinding glare? Leo's greatest act of courage wasn't walking away the first time. It was walking away the second time from the seductive promise of a controlled comeback, when he realized that the deal, however good, would cost him the very thing he was bargaining to protect. The music industry, with its hunger for authentic narratives, almost consumed his. It's a system that can recognize artistry but often fails to understand the artist. Elena Rossi saw the signal in the noise, but even with the best intentions, she was still a part of the machine. Titan Records saw only an asset to be reclaimed. Leo had to step completely outside their definitions to find his own. He didn't reject his gift, he redeemed it. He transformed it from a product to be sold into a thread of human connection. Anchor wasn't a hit, it was a tool for healing. The gold plaque for 1,000,000 streams of solace is perhaps the purest award an artist could ever receive. It measures impact, not income. This isn't a story about giving up on your dreams. It's about discovering that the dream you were sold might be smaller than the life you can build. Leo's legacy won't be a plaque in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It will be the man his son remembers, present, patient, real. It will be the thousands of dollars donated to grieving children. It will be in the quiet moments of comfort his song provided in countless dark bedrooms. The park bench is still there. The city hums around it. Every day, ordinary people pass by, carrying their own hidden melodies, their own quiet sacrifices, their own dreams they've tucked away for what they believe is a greater love. Leo's story tells us that those dreams don't have to die. They can simply change shape, finding expression not in the roar of a crowd, but in the profound silence of a life lived without regret. He traded the fame he had for the future he wanted. And in the end, he discovered his voice was most powerful not when it filled an arena, but when it helped his little boy sleep, or when it offered a strand of hope to a stranger navigating their own loss. That is a song that never ends. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about the choices you're making and the price of the spotlight you seek, then share your thoughts below. Tell me what you would have done. And if you want more documentaries that explore the hidden human stories behind the headlines, make sure to subscribe. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most extraordinary thing you can do is to protect the ordinary.